we're here today to hear from Alissa Hsu Lynch, who is, let's see, what is your title exactly? You head Global Medtech Strategy and Solutions for Google Cloud.
I do.
Yeah, and you have over 20 years of global medtech and consumer goods experience. Previously, a VP, were you a VP for a specific sector at J&J?
Yeah, I was vice president within J&J's medical device businesses, most recently in the Europe, Middle East, Africa region.
So we're going to learn what medtech and health tech can learn from big tech, and surprisingly, I guess the other way around. Going to be very interesting. Should we talk about your interest in dance also? I mean, it's we don't. This is the first time I think we've had anybody who has any connection to dance, and you like grew up wanting to be a dancer and actually were a dancer for 6 years with a very prestigious dance company, Limon Dance Company, and not that we need to go into it, but you know, when you've performed at Lincoln Center, that's some you know, high level arts experience. So I guess, you know, we'd probably be interested in how you ended up where you are now from that as well. So Alissa, yeah, go ahead.
So, I mean, that's a perfect segue because that's what I was planning to talk about first, which is just to let people know who I am and how I got to Google Cloud and my journey to health tech. So as Casper mentioned, after college, I had a professional dance career. So I went to Princeton University, majored in English, and I had danced ballet my whole life. And then when I got to college, thought I would stop dancing, but continued with the student dance group and taking classes at the university. And my senior year, one of my dance professors asked whether I wanted to dance or had considered dancing professionally. And so she convinced me to go into New York City and audition for dance companies. And lo and behold, I actually got a job with the Limon Dance Company to do a year-long tour throughout Eastern Europe and the United States and South America. So of course I said, I'm going to do that for a year, and I deferred from law school and thought, you know, I can always go back to law school. Well, I never went back to law school. I ended up deferring for 2 years and then, you know, decided, okay, this dance thing is actually working out for me. So I was able to continue to get work and dance professionally for 6 years, traveling all over the world, living my childhood dream. But it's really difficult, like, you know, any professional athlete, to continue dancing for a long time. So I went back and got my MBA. I was living in New York City, went to Columbia Business School. And from Columbia, I got a job at Johnson & Johnson in brand management on their consumer businesses. Ended up staying at J&J for a very wonderful 20-year career with J&J. I left briefly, but ended up going back. Started on the consumer businesses, was able to move over to work on diabetes, and then ended my career there working on medical devices, which includes orthopedics, general surgery, cardiovascular. And also had the opportunity to move from brand management or marketing into sales and general management and strategy roles, as well as to live abroad. So I had the opportunity to live in Shanghai, China, as well as in Switzerland, which is where I was pre-pandemic. And my husband and I had become empty nesters at that time, and decided to move back to the US and move to Seattle to be close to the mountains, because that's what we really loved about Switzerland. And with that move back to the US, I also decided to leave J&J. I felt like I had a wonderful career at J&J. Pre-pandemic, J&J did not have an office. They still don't have an office here in Seattle. And so the thought was, well, there's not really a long-term role if you want to move to Seattle. And I really wanted to move to Seattle. So decided to leave and thought about what would I like to do next. Had always been interested in moving more into health tech. And was able to make the leap from, a multinational healthcare company to Google. And now I work at Google Cloud. I lead their Medtech strategy and solutions, which means essentially that I, talk with a lot of C-suite, so CEOs, CTOs, CIOs, business leaders of medical device and diagnostic companies, and help them think about driving digital transformation, leveraging cloud infrastructure, but also Google's capabilities broadly, whether it be our artificial and machine learning technologies or other parts of the Alphabet universe. And I can talk a little bit more about that later. But yeah, so that was my journey to health tech. And the reason I decided to join Google is because I guess two main reasons. One is really thinking more about my purpose. So one of the things in making a career change that I definitely advise to people is to really think about what is it that you want to do, because you have an opportunity to make a change, and what gives you energy. And so I had always really been interested in making an impact on consumer lives, on consumer healthcare at global scale. One of the reasons I stayed at J&J for so long. But I also recognized that where the market was going was really moving towards technology and the role of technology. And I felt it would be really interesting to think about healthcare challenges from a technology perspective. And that's something that's always driven me as well, is this just desire to continue learning. And even though I had no tech background, I was formerly an English major, formerly a dancer, I just feel like I love learning and I wanted to take on that challenge. And also growth and innovation really give me energy. So that's really the first reason, is I just aligned well with what I wanted to do and what I felt was my personal purpose and impact that I wanted to make. The second reason I joined Google is because Google has been making significant investments in healthcare. So we have, I think, 57 different investments across the Alphabet companies. And we really view healthcare as an industry that has a lot of challenges and inefficiencies, but one that AI, so artificial intelligence and technology, can help transform and can help make a difference in people's lives. So that is also what really drew me to Google. So what I wanted to talk about today is to just share some of my insights since joining Google, because I've been at the company now for 1 year, just had my 1-year Googleversary. And before I forget and become, just a Googler, and I wanted to just reflect. It's always a good time to reflect after you've been at a company for a year about what you've learned. And so I wanted to just share some of those learnings with you. And also, please feel free to type in questions into the Q&A chat if you have any questions as I go through this. So the 5 key insights or learnings or themes that I wanted to talk through today, and I'll go into a little bit more detail on each one, are listed here. So this concept of 10x thinking, which is something that we really believe in at Google. Number 2 is it's all about the data. So I'll talk about that from a medtech perspective. Number 3 is that AI powers everything. And that's specifically at Google, but I think it should be increasingly so across healthcare. This concept of both and, which really speaks to a growth mindset. And the 5th one is that it takes an ecosystem. So I'll talk through each of those, and I'll be sure to stop to pause for questions along the way. So jumping into the first theme, which is around 10x thinking. So this is something that in my orientation at Google is part of the training. So they really implant this idea of 10x thinking, which is coming up with radical solutions to really big problems and shooting for the moon and trying to solve those big problems, because even if you don't reach the moon, maybe you'll reach the stars and really, make that dent in the universe, as we say. And it's about making and thinking about how can you make a 10x improvement for an existing solution, or in how you address a new solution, versus just a 10% improvement. And that was really refreshing to me, and a bit daunting as well, because just having worked at a big medtech company, that is a market leader, or, I think growth slows down as you get bigger. And so what success looked like was starting to look like, single digit growth, or we've already have a lot of innovation out there, so let's just improve upon the innovation that we have. So I think it was just really refreshing for me to kind of reset my mindset and take on this concept of 10x thinking. And it really does permeate our conversations and our approach to the market. So I wanted to give you some examples of how we've applied 10x thinking in healthcare. So this first example comes from DeepMind, which is one of the Alphabet companies. And last year, there was an announcement that DeepMind's AlphaFold machine learning system helped solve a grand challenge in biology, which is the protein folding problem. So the protein folding problem has been a challenge for almost 50 years. And DeepMind's AlphaFold system helped solve this late last year. And the significance is really that it's going to help science in general to better understand diseases, but also lead to development of the treatment of new diseases or of other diseases. And to build on that, about 6 months later, this summer, DeepMind announced that for the common good, they were going to make the source code for the AlphaFold system available to the world. So that is now published, it's out there, other companies can access it. They also made accessible the predictions for all of the protein structures in the human body. And really the intent is, this is machine learning, this is AI for good. We want to be able to advance scientific discovery and help companies across the healthcare ecosystem develop the cures for new diseases and develop new treatments. So that's super exciting and indicative of the approach that Google likes to take in terms of thinking about how do we really make an impact. So the second example I wanted to give you from healthcare, this is a recent one that was announced earlier this summer, which is around using imaging AI to help in healthcare. So there are 10 billion searches on Google every year about skin, hair, and nail conditions. And there are actually 2 billion people who suffer from dermatologic conditions, but there's a global shortage of specialists. Also, if you're like me and most people, if you have something or some kind of medical condition or you see something wrong on your skin, the first place you go is actually Google search. But it's really difficult to sometimes describe what's happening with your skin using words. So we saw this as an opportunity to introduce this idea of image search for dermatology conditions. So this dermatology assistant is not yet launched. It has CE mark approval. It's going to pilot early next year and go as a direct-to-consumer web-facing application. And what it's going to allow people to do is to take 3 pictures from different angles of whatever skin condition they have, to upload those into this application. And then our machine learning algorithm is going to be able to compare that to 288 skin conditions that we've already have cataloged and trained the model on. And it will help people identify what is the most likely condition that you have. So just like Google search works, it's going to serve up search results of this is, it's going to help narrow down like this is most likely what it is. And then also be able to direct people to whether it's a provider that they should see or products that are relevant or further research. So it's not diagnosing the skin condition, but it's going to help consumers narrow down what that condition is, which really should help the dermatology community as well, because they just can't handle being able to see all the people who have issues. So that's another example of 10x thinking. And I just wanted to share what 10x thinking to me means. And to me, it's really about a mindset as well as a culture. So that's probably the difference that I've observed in joining Google is, of course, it always starts with the user. So we have this saying, focus on the user and all else will follow. And that's not uncommon to med tech companies either, but it's really the start of design thinking. This idea of solving big problems and going after the big challenges. One difference I would say in my prior experience, and it's N of one, but I did feel later in my career with the prior company that I had become much more internally focused. And a big difference I see in myself moving to Google is I'm much, much more externally focused. So I'm working across the healthcare ecosystem. I'm looking much more forward thinking and, just thinking about what does the world actually need us to solve. So that's where I say it's a mindset, because it's almost like, well, you work at Google, you need to be thinking big. And that's actually really challenged me to think bigger. And that's been a good change for me, I think, as well. The third one is, if you want people to go after big problems, you also need to create this open culture so that people can build on each other's ideas. And that was the big change for me in first joining Google, is that everything is shared. So source code is shared, your strategies are shared. And, we just have a very open culture, a very open company internally, of course. But one of the first things I had to do in joining Google Cloud was to define a medtech strategy. So it was sort of, okay, you have medtech expertise, that's why we hired you. Now develop the strategy and figure out what solutions we should offer. And that goes to the fourth one, which is empowering your employees. And I was like, okay, there's no structure around this, but I have a couple hypotheses based on my experience. So I sort of put my thoughts on paper, and then people encourage me, we'll share that, get feedback from others, just share your document. And so that's what I did. I started sharing my what felt to me as very early thinking. And people started commenting on it. So you just get comments left and right from people around, have you thought about this? Or I would look at it this way, or have you talked to so-and-so? And at first it was really disconcerting for me, because I was trying to address every single comment and make sure that I was, incorporating all of it. And finally it was so overwhelming. Someone who had been at Google for a while told me, well, you decide which comments you want to incorporate and resolve them if you want to resolve them, but you don't have to accommodate everybody. So, just at a certain point, you move on. And that's, speaks to sort of this entrepreneurial culture, this open culture, but it was definitely an adjustment for me, because I was used to kind of getting everybody on board, and then you all align and then move forward. And in this case, it's like, if you think it's the right thing to do and you've considered all the different angles and all the different input, then move forward. And that's been really super empowering, but also something I had to get used to personally. And then that leads me to the last one on this page, which is fail fast and learn. So clearly, iterating, prototyping, validating, learning, and getting it right is the approach that we take, which I would say can be a challenge working in healthcare, because we can't just put out solutions that have a potential impact on patients and then iterate on it. So there's been a balance of also me bringing some of the thinking of, this is a regulated industry. We need to think about this carefully, and balancing that and bringing that back into Google to think about how we approach healthcare. So I'll just stop there. See any questions as I go. Okay. Casper, can you let me know? Am I still here? Because
everything is all good. Yeah, I know you're not getting any feedback. I'm sure people have questions. Why don't you just continue, see if any questions pop up, and address them as they do. Okay, so it looks like the chat is on too, so everybody can chat to you. So yeah, I have a question, which is just that these days we become increasingly aware that every Google search we type in is being registered so that Google knows more and more about us. And how do you think that people, do you think they even care that Google knows that they have all these, now they've got literally the pictures of the skin conditions that they're trying to check out? How does Google address the privacy concerns of people uploading their or sharing personal images?
Yeah, that's a excellent question, and it's one that we get a lot. So I'm in the Google Cloud organization, and that's where a lot of our high computing resources are, you know, that power the imaging AI algorithms. So first of all, we actually don't own your data. And when we work with other enterprises that are developing models, or, you know, leveraging our cloud, it's always their data. It's the patient's data, it's the provider's data, or if the payer has access to the data. When we're training models as well, if we're training them, we do it with de-identified images, de-identified data. So the algorithm does know and can serve you very relevant information. That's what makes you know, our products so useful and why people keep using Google search. But it's not actually Google. Like we don't have your personal information, you identified as a person, and we're not watching you. Although sometimes I do say, you know, it is amazing how relevant search results often are. As if they know a lot about you, but no, we take privacy extremely seriously, and particularly with healthcare data. We actually have, I mean, you know, I wasn't going to share it today, but we have the highest level of trust, all the certifications, a lot of controls in place, and if the patient or the consumer opts in, then, you know, we also have patient consent management and processes in place for that. So, but it's a great question because just with more and more data being generated and being shared, I think we should be asking that as consumers.
Yeah, so by the way, I want to encourage anybody who has a question. Looks like the chat feed is open. You can enter your questions in there. So I just love that I get to ask this question though. So presumably Google will get smarter almost exponentially as time goes on, because you'll see people searching for things, and then based on their search history, even if it's de-identified, eventually Google will know what it is that they actually have, right? Because they'll end up getting, you know, their future search history will point towards what their actual condition is. I don't know if that could get incorporated into the intelligence, so that in the future Google now knows that images of this type are associated with this condition.
Yeah, I mean, that is the intent. So there's a concept about active learning when it comes to machine learning models, and that is something that we are leveraging more and more to be able, or to enable models to become smarter, so that they can become much more accurate and deliver more value. So that absolutely is something that, you know, the machine learning and AI field is moving towards. And yeah, I think, you know, we tend to think about it from our own perspective, but generally it's across large data sets. So it's not, again, at an individual level. Like a model is not developed just on your data. It's developed on lots and lots of data, and that's what makes the model more robust.